So let me ask you a question because it's the middle of the summer. I pick up the news. Well, I haven't picked up a newspaper in years, but I look at the newspaper online. I see what's in the newspaper every day. It's Epstein, 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 all those Epstein stuff. And yet, here's what I'm getting from you guys: the Secretary of Defense is an imbecile. Nobody will work for him. The Department of Defense is in chaos. There are wars and things going on in the world. The Secretary of State has just A, fired a bunch of people out of the State Department, and B, issued a statement, which I found astonishing, and nobody picked up on this, saying that anybody who speaks on behalf of the State Department should make every effort to think of what the president would say and say that, which I mean, there's a memo that was circulated at the State Department that said this, which is kind of stunning. We don't have, Kori, I'm going to go to you with this, but we don't have a National Security Council to speak of. We don't have a National Security Advisor. There's no process going on there. The president doesn't get briefed. I just did a Need to Know podcast with Tim Weiner, who writes about the CIA. There's a new book out called The Mission. And he referred to Tulsi Gabbard as a crackpot and John Ratcliffe as a hack. So the intelligence community is led by crackpots and hacks. There's nobody leading the National Security Council. The State Department's led by an imbecile. The Pentagon is led by an imbecile. The State Department is melting down around us. AID is gone. Doesn't this I mean, shouldn't people be a little more alarmed that the national security apparatus of the United States is, burning out before our very eyes?
Yes.
Thank you. And over to you, Rosa. No, go. Perhaps you elaborate.
I agree with your judgment, David, that the intelligence community, or I should say, at least the DNI, is ridiculously politicizing the intelligence community, and in ways that have nothing to do with the actual function of her job. It's less clear to me that the CIA director is doing his job catastrophically. I see less evidence of that. You're clearly right that there's no national security process. There's no interagency coordination. None of the kind of people raising ideas that then get vetted by stakeholders within the government before they become policy. And so that's why we get the cabinet of amplifiers racing to try and publicly state what they think the president is going to say. And we just saw a couple of genuinely destructive exercises of it from the Defense Department. The uncoordinated announcement that the US government was reconsidering the AUKUS treaty with Australia and Britain, which nobody had consulted allies or the White House about before DOD made the announcement. And the second, the cutoff of aid to Ukraine, which the White House then reversed because the Undersecretary of Defense for Policy apparently determined on his own, without the approval of the Defense Secretary or the White House, and over the objections of the military, who said, we don't need these weapons for a potential war in China. It's more important for Ukraine to win in Europe in order to deter China from starting a war in Asia. But they nonetheless effectuated the cutoff of aid to Ukraine. And it took a heroic effort to get the White House to know it was happening and reverse it. And I think that's going to be the pattern of policy in the Trump administration, right? Sub-cabinet officials taking initiative to do destructive things that the White House will then claim to have no knowledge of, and The cabinet officials are incapable of understanding what's going on in their own departments.
So, Rosa, it appears that the ship of state is a ship of fools. It's headed in the wrong direction. It's taking on water, and there are icebergs ahead. Um, we used to regularly turn to you and say, "Do we have a constitutional crisis?" And you would say, "Well, no, not quite yet." But this seems like some kind of crisis to me. But maybe I'm just alarmist and overstating it for podcast effect.
It seems like a crisis. I don't know that it's a constitutional crisis, as I've
No,
said
no, it's
before.
not. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that. It's just a crisis.
Killer old crisis. It's just a
Yeah.
plain old crisis. Yeah, of course. And I mean, I think Kori is absolutely right. It's not even clear you can speak of the U.S. as having a foreign policy at this point. We seem to have several different foreign policies, sometimes competing with one another. I don't even think it's weird for there to be a memo saying, hey, people, if you're speaking on behalf of the State Department, try to think of what the president might say. Uh, every administration tries to police its people and make sure that they are not getting quote unquote ahead of the president on anything. And I think all of us, with the exception of Ed, who has journalistic integrity, all of us have worked for presidential administrations and political appointee positions. We've all seen or experienced getting sort of slapped down if you use a word that the White House has decided it doesn't like anymore. And sometimes you don't even know what that word is, right? But until you would use it by accident, then suddenly you're told, no, we don't say that anymore. You can't say that, whatever. So that's not unusual. I think.
I'm sorry, Rosa. It was rude of me to interrupt. I apologize. My favorite example was you can't use the words pivot to Asia.
Right. No more pivots. No pivot. Thou shalt not pivot. Yes, exactly. I mean, in fact, we can all think of examples, ridiculous examples of people getting yelled at by the White House for using some phrase that was the term of art until suddenly it wasn't the term of art and they didn't get the memo. They were not allowed to say it anymore. That's not weird. I think the problem, the really problematic aspect and I pity these poor people at the State Department of saying, think of what the president might say and then say it, is not that that's sort of bizarre and unprecedented especially for political appointees who are supposed to be representing the president's views. The problem is that since Donald Trump will just say whatever random thing comes into his head and then contradict himself 5 minutes later, there's really no way to know what the president is likely to say because it's not clear the president has any idea what the president is likely to say, which just takes us back to that original challenge of, we don't have one foreign policy. We have multiple foreign policies. In fact, President Trump himself sometimes seems to have multiple foreign policies within the space of about half an hour. There's just no coherence, whether you're trying to be I pity these poor Trump administration appointees who are attempting to be, obsequious, subservient loyalists. Even they can't get it right because there's no possible way to know what President Trump is going to want you to say or do at any given moment. And he will repudiate you in a millisecond if you screw up.